Tantra Illuminated with Dr. Christopher Wallace is a journey through the depths of the human experience, as viewed through the lens of the tradition called non-dual Shaiva Tantra. This multi-format podcast delves into the fascinating world of classical Tantra and its intersections with philosophy, neuroscience, psychology, human development, and the broader world of spirituality. This episode of the podcast is a special one. It's Chapter 1 of my new audiobook, The Complete Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra. The audiobook is exclusively available in the new meditation app, Tantra 112. This is unlike any other meditation app out there, presenting the full range of classical tantric practices from the Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra. It's already available, though the public release is coming at the beginning of March 2026. The feedback we've gotten from early adopters of the app is absolutely incredible. Check it out at tantra112.app and enjoy Chapter 1 of the audiobook. Like most tantric scriptures, the Trika text called the Scripture of the Bhairava who is Consciousness takes the form of a dialogue between Shiva and Shakti, here called Bhairava and Bhairavi. It begins with the goddess asking the god, Shrutam deva maya sarvam rudra yamala sambhavam trika bhedam asheshena saratsara vibhagashaha. O Lord, I have heard the entire teaching of the Trika that has arisen from our union in scriptures of ever greater essentiality, but even now my doubts have not yet dissolved. What is the true nature of reality, O Lord? Before explicating this fascinating opening, let us begin with a simple introduction to the text. The Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra, or VBT, is a scripture of the Shaiva Tantric tradition, also known as Tantric Shaivism, or Kashmir Shaivism to some. And this text appeared around the middle of the 9th century, so maybe about 850 in our calendar. The VBT is a text of the Trika lineage, specifically of the Kaula Trika, which means the more transgressive, non-dualistic version of the Trika lineage, which traces itself back to a female founder. The Trika then comes in both Kaula and non-Kaula varieties. You will be familiar with these terms if you have read Tantra Illuminated. The regular Trika was founded by the sage Triambaka, possibly around the 6th century, who probably lived near Nasik in western India, and the Kaula Trika was founded by his daughter, whose name is sadly lost in the mists of time. What does the title Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra mean? The full translation is, the scripture of Bhairava, the awesome, intense, fierce, or frightening form of Shiva, who is, according to this text, nothing but intensified awareness, especially awareness fully conjoined with its innate power of insight. Vijñāna means both consciousness and insight in this text. So the simple translation of the title is the Scripture of the Bhairava who is Consciousness. The word Vijñāna refers not to some abstract consciousness, but the very consciousness possessed by all conscious creatures, so your consciousness, the aspect of your being that is present in all experiences whatsoever, from the subjective first-person point of view. The Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra, or VBT, has been translated several times under several titles. It was first translated into a European language, namely French, by Lillian Silburn in 1961. But just before this, in 1957, American poet Paul Reps published a free English rendering of the 112 techniques of the VBT under the title Centering, in his book Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. Reps had sat with the great Trika Guru Swami Lakshmanju in Kashmir a few years before and studied the text with him. Even though Reps's version is not at all a translation, it was highly influential, forming the basis of Rajneesh's The Book of Secrets and Lauren Roche's The Radiance Sutras, neither of which are in any sense translations of the VBT. The first English translation done on the basis of the Sanskrit original was by Jaidev Singh and appeared in 1979 under the title Vijñāna-bhairava, or Divine Consciousness, a Treasury of 112 Types of Yoga. We have more than a dozen English translations of this text, so why produce yet another one? Well, mainly because none of those translations is actually satisfactory. The main reason for this is that even though a few of the published translations are by competent Sanskritists, they don't provide us with any clear or comprehensible instructions on how to actually do any of the 112 techniques taught by the VBT. What we are interested in here is getting a clear exposition of the practices and step-by-step instructions on how to do these practices. And this is where we run into a problem, because the text is intentionally elliptical, meaning it intentionally omits necessary information. Now, this kind of text does not give you all the information needed to fully understand or do the practice, and many scriptures in the tantric traditions are intentionally elliptical in this way because their authors expected that the text would be explained by a competent scholar practitioner of the tradition called an acharya, or by a guru. I myself am more of the former, not so much the latter. And I can attest that it does take at least 12 years of full-time education in this tradition to actually really understand what this text and others like it are saying. The reason it takes so long is that one must read a wide range of tantric sources to correctly interpret any one of them. One needs to read broadly as well as deeply, so that when the text alludes to a practice that one knows from other sources, one can recognize that fact and then go and look at those related, complementary, or parallel sources to decode the meaning of the practice in question. But the good news is you don't need to do this 12 or more years of study because I've done it on your behalf. And I'm here to explain the practices of the text and also let you know when there are ambiguities that I haven't been able to decipher. Too many translators of Sanskrit texts have hidden their own lack of understanding behind vague and ambiguous language, and I won't be doing that here. Okay, so that's the backstory, the context. Now I want to explain a little bit more about what is going on in this text. The first thing we notice is that it is a dialogue between Shiva and Shakti, here going by the names Bhairava and Bhairavi, respectively. As mentioned, Bhairava is a name for the fierce or intense form of Shiva. When Bhairava is understood anthropomorphically, as a specific deity among other deities, then he is pictured with fangs, completely naked, adorned only with a living serpent as a belt. He wanders around, disguised as a naked beggar. He eats and drinks out of a bowl made from a human cranium, and he is accompanied by a dog. Now in the West, a dog is man's best friend, but in traditional India, a dog is an impure, outcast sort of creature that Bhairava befriends because he himself is a marginal, liminal figure who stands outside the norms of society and challenges them in various ways with transgressive ideas and practices. But Bhairava in this text is understood to mean consciousness itself, specifically spacious, open, empty, pure awareness, presence. We see the word Bhairava used in this way over and over in the text, not referring to a mythological being, but rather this spacious, open, transparent consciousness, which we could also call radiant emptiness. Bhairava also refers to the experience that unparticularized open awareness actually pervades everything and constitutes the very ground of one's being. We see very clearly that in this text, Bhairava is not seen as a deity among other deities, a member of a polytheistic pantheon, but rather represents this fundamental awareness, and Bhairavi is his consort, his other half, as it were. Bhairavi is the same word as Bhairava, but in the feminine. So what is Bhairavi signifying here? Well, a key verse of the entire text explains that Bhairavi is Purna Bharita, the state of complete fullness, the overflowing fullness that is an intensification of pure being, presence. Bhairavi is when that open, spacious, pure consciousness of Bhairava intensifies or has a quality of intense immediacy and a quality of fullness, full to overflowing, permeated by the innate bliss of one's true nature. If Bhairava is the pure emptiness of spacious awareness, Bhairavi is its fullness. We will learn more about this as we go along. The VBT teaches, in verse 20, that most people come to realize their ultimate Shiva nature through the doorway of Shakti. It suggests that we can go into an experience of pure intensity, and it gives many examples of that. And then that intensity can be a gateway to reposing in pure consciousness, pure presence, pure being itself. Shakti is associated here with a powerful immediacy of experience, especially any experience so powerful that we transcend the everyday thinking mind and can therefore enter into the vastness of pure being. The text as a default assumes that for most people it's easier to reach Shiva through Shakti, though the end goal is to experience Shiva Shakti as a unified whole, each a different mode of the other. We can access the intensity of Shakti in powerful emotional experiences, powerful sexual experiences, or sensual experiences of various kinds, especially sonic ones. The text points out opportunities for accessing Bhairava nature that might be surprising in an ancient source, such as when it recommends walking until exhausted and then lying on the earth, or being physically rocked, or looking into the depths of a frighteningly dark sky on a moonless, stormy night, or even painfully piercing one's flesh. If you can dissolve any resistance to such experiences and let the everyday thinking mind dissolve as well, then the very intensity of those experiences leads you right into the open, spacious, pure presence, sheer aliveness, pure beingness. And that is Bhairava conjoined with Bhairavi. The text also offers us examples of simple daily life experiences, like seeing a loved one you haven't seen in a while, savoring delicious food and drink, hovering on the edge of sleep, and many more, that can become access points, such that we can experience this sublime state anywhere, anytime, in everyday life. The text has actually become famous for the kind of practices I've just been alluding to, precisely because they are atypical for the tradition. We do not find them in very many sources at all. Out of our hundreds of primary sources, such daily life practices that constitute a window into liberated awareness are found only in a handful of sources. Now we return to the beginning of the text itself. Right now we will focus on the first 1.5 verses, because we have the logical end of a sentence in the middle of the second verse. First it says, Shri Devyuvacha, which means the blessed goddess says. The Devi is, of course, Bhairavi. Shri Devyuvacha Shrutam Deva Maya Sarvam Rudrayamala Sambhavam Trikabhedam Asheshena Sarat Sara Vibhagashaha Adyapi Nanavritto Me Samshaya Parameshwara Kim Rupam Tattvato Deva, which means, O Lord, I have heard the entire teaching of the Trika that has arisen from our union in scriptures of ever greater essentiality, but even now my doubts have not yet dissolved. What is the true nature of reality, O Lord? Now let's look at the words of this verse in detail. I won't do this highly granular breakdown for all the verses of the text, but the first verse in most Sanskrit texts is especially important, so I'll just take a little extra time with this first verse. The first word of the first verse is shrutam, which means heard. It is a past passive participle of the verbal root shru, to hear. The next word, maya, means by me. So, the full phrase is, it was heard by me. In the passive voice, which can become an English active voice, I have heard. Why put it in the passive voice? Well, that way the first word of the first verse can be not I, but rather heard. And the first word of a Sanskrit text is often very significant for that text. The Bhagavad Gita begins with the word dharma, and this text begins with shrutam, which implies that we need to listen carefully to what is being said. The goddess says, I have heard you, O Lord. Bhairavi is saying to Bhairava, I have deeply listened to your scriptural revelation. I have heard what you had to say. We are supposed to aspire to be like Bhairavi. She is modeling for us this devotional attention, this careful listening with the curiosity and desire to fully understand. Shrutam is also close to the word shruti, meaning divine revelation in the form of oral transmission, a scripture that is delivered orally. Here we have shrutam, which is a reference to the importance of hearing correctly and absorbing. This word initiates the whole scripture. The next word, Deva, means O Lord. Deva can also mean king, god, celestial being, or even husband, and all of those apply here to Bhairava from the perspective of Bhairavi. The great tantric master Abhinavagupta points out that Deva comes from the root div, which means to shine or to be playful. Abhinavagupta suggests we should understand Deva not to mean God, king, or lord, but to mean rather the playful, shining one. The shining, playful ones are the gods and celestials, the beings of radiant light. So we could translate Deva as, O shining, playful one. Bhairavi says, I have heard everything that has arisen from the Rudra Yamala. And here we have a double meaning. Rudra Yamala is the name of an ancient scripture now lost, but it also means the Rudra union, meaning the union of Shiva and Shakti. So the Rudra Yamala is the union of Bhairava and Bhairavi, specifically using this old word for the fierce and intense form of Shiva, that is to say, Rudra. The first line then is, I have heard, O Shining One, everything that has arisen from the union of Bhairava and Bhairavi, from our union, because it is Bhairavi herself speaking. I have heard everything that the energetic pulsations that have arisen from our union express in the form of Scripture. I have heard all that completely. Asheshena. And then she goes on to say, Trika Bhedam, Asheshena, which means the entire teaching of the Trika lineage. Trika Bhedam means the Trika division of the scriptural corpus of Tantric Shaivism. I have heard everything arising from our union, and especially everything in the Trika lineage. That is to say, Bhairavi implies that she has been taught the Malini Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra, the Siddha Yogeshwari Mata Tantra, and the Trishiro-bhairava-tantra, these being the three key scriptures of the Trika lineage circa the 9th century. She is saying, I've heard and understood all of that. And by the way, if you think it is sexist that Shiva is teaching Shakti, we actually do have scriptures that are the other way around. In the Krama lineage, for example, it is rather Shakti teaching Shiva, and he is her earnest student. But of course, either way, the teaching is something that happens for our benefit, we who are eavesdropping on the divine conversation. So, Bhairavi says, I have heard the entire Trika teaching in its completeness. I have heard every word. I have heard it in revelations of ever greater essentiality. The last phrase translates Sarat Sara Vibhagashaha, which is a colloquial phrase that means literally proportionately of the essence from the essence, which signifies ever greater essentiality, meaning more and more distilled forms of the teaching. Bhairavi goes on to say, Adyapi na nivritto me samshaya parameshwara, which means, even now my doubts have not come to rest. They are not eliminated. I still have doubts, Parameshwara. This last word means something like Supreme Lord, but it simply doesn't translate well into English, so we can just keep it as a proper name. Even now my doubts remain. O Parameshwara. So she's being super honest by saying, I've heard all this and I'm still not satisfied. I need to get something else, something even more essential. And she then says, Kim Rupam Tattvato Deva, which translates to, what is the true nature of reality, O Lord? Kim Rupam literally means what form. Bhairavi asks, what form does the ultimate reality assume in truth, O Lord? What is the nature of the ultimate reality? Or, what is the nature of that which is most ultimately true? So, to be clear, ultimate reality in these texts really means that which is most fundamentally true, that which is true in all times, places, and circumstances. So, Kim Rupam Tattvato Deva asks, what is the nature of that which is in accordance with the suchness of reality, tattva, the actuality of reality? Bhairavi is saying, I want you to tell me what is really true because I've heard all of this, all these teachings, and I want to get to the essence now, the absolute essence of the truth. So she is powerful, direct, and brave, a great model for us. She is even challenging her teacher. This is such a beautiful passage. Bhairavi is modeling for us how to be a student in this tradition. You listen to everything, and then, if you are not satisfied, you ask further questions. You even challenge the teacher. The text invites us to follow in her footsteps. She loves Bhairava, her consort teacher, but she is not meek. She asks him to break it down for her more clearly. She wants to get to the real meat of it, the real heart of the matter. Next, Bhairavi is going to ask, hey, is the ultimate reality this or that, or this or that? And we will look at these propositions, possibilities, and hypotheses in the next chapter. That was Chapter 1 of the audiobook, exclusively available in the Tantra 112 app. The audiobook is not yet complete, I should note. There are 11 chapters available in the app, with a new chapter dropping every month until it is complete. For more information, go to tantra112.app. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Remember, you can always find out more about the tradition of non-dual Shaiva Tantra at tantrailluminated.org, where, if you wish, you can become a subscriber to our online learning portal, and you'll receive access to a vast number of recordings, including a comprehensive curriculum in tantric philosophy, tantric yoga practices, guided meditations, and much more. Music for the podcast composed and recorded by Ann Leader. Find her at annleader.com. Podcast produced by Paula Chamas. New episodes drop every other week. And may all beings benefit.